So I've got my cloth ready. I've pre-washed it in this case and pressed it with a clean fold here on the centre, and also the right side of my fabric is on the inside. So what I'm going to do now is to lay the pattern pieces out on the cloth and pin them before I cut them out. So first of all, I'm going to take the front of the apron. This is cut out on the fold so that it then opens up as one single piece. So you place it on the fabric. If your fabric has a very obvious pattern that's got a right way up or a wrong way, then you would obviously have the top of the apron with the pattern hanging the right way. On this, it doesn't matter which way it hangs. So I place it straight along the fold, and what we've done just to help you is we've actually put some little markers here where we want you to pin. It's not a great idea to pin a lot right along the straight edge of a pattern when you're cutting out, because it automatically creates little bumps here, which actually makes it more difficult. So I think people sometimes overpin their patterns to the cloth. So this is why we've just tried to be helpful and give you a little guide. So starting here, and first of all getting it straight along the fold. Like that. So I'm making sure that the pins are clear of the edges as well, and then there's no risk of them hitting the scissors when you come to cut it out. There's a couple more to get around the bend here. And the last one there. So now we're going to cut out the two back sections of the Hepworth apron. So you cut through the fabric double, so you automatically have two. And the most important thing to remember when you're doing this part of the process is to get it straight on the cloth so that it will drape properly when it's all sewn up together. And the way that you do that is by having the grain line, which is this large arrow here that runs down the pattern. You want to have that parallel to the selvage of the cloth, which is the finished edge here. So what you do, normally you can trust your eye and place the pattern piece on the cloth and have a look that it's kind of straight, or sometimes if you come away a little bit and look down, you can see if you're nearly there. But just to be doubly sure, you would then take a tape measure or a ruler and measure the distance from the grain line to the edge of the cloth, and just tweak it slightly until they match up. And then quickly you want to then secure it in place with some pins. As you can see, the main pattern pieces are laid out on the fabric now, and just wanted to demonstrate that it does fit. It's quite snug, but it fits fine on a 44-inch wide fabric, which is a standard cotton that you would get on the bolt in a shop. Obviously a lot of linens and denims are 60 wide, so you have a little bit more room to play with, but it does fit fine. When you're cutting out, a top tip is to try and cut with the pattern to the, if you're right-handed like me, to the right of your scissors. If you do it like that, you can use your left hand to take away any of the excess cloth. The blades of your scissors are directly underneath your eye, so you can cut more accurately. And also if you're to be knocked or anything, the scissors would automatically go into the excess fabric as opposed to what you're cutting out. The same applies if you're left-handed, you would have the pattern to the left of your scissors. And you want to start with the scissors nice and open and cut long snips right to the tips, trying to keep the pattern and the cloth as flat on the table as possible rather than being tempted to lift it up so that it's closer to your eye. And what's useful is if you've got a smaller table, move your body around the table. If not, move the pattern as you go so that you're always staying with it under your eye and to your right hand side. If you're cutting on a slight curve, it's just a case of trying to drive the blade of the scissors to keep with that shape. Sometimes if it's a very tight corner, it's easier to make smaller snips. So now I'm going to just flip this so the pattern's still on my right. And you can see, because that we haven't got a long length of about 20 pins down this curve, that it's actually laying nice and flat. Doing slightly smaller snips but still right to the tips, just to get around this corner. And then what you can see here down this side panel here of the Hepworth apron is that we have some notches, and the notches on all of our patterns are marked here by these small triangles. What you want to do when you come across one of those is cut a triangle into the extra cloth in the mirror image of this shape so that you've got it as a guide when you're matching up the pattern pieces later on. So when you're coming up to it, just pause and then snip a little triangle like that, and then carry on to the next one. It's one of my favourite sounds, this scissors cutting cloth. It's not a perfect triangle, but essentially where it ends matches the notch there, and that's the important thing for the next step. Nearly there. So the Hepworth apron, it can have 2 single pockets or 1 large pocket on the front. For this apron today, I'm sewing up the single pockets, which is this pattern piece here. I'm going to use 2 of these with my fabric matching the outside of my apron, and then I'm going to line them with a contrast fabric because I've got this lovely shot cotton that matches, and it can also just add a little bit of individuality. So on this one here, I put a floral print on the inside. If you want to do that, then you need an extra fat quarter of fabric when you're actually making the pockets. So I'll pin this on, tells you which is the top if you do have a directional print. So I'll cut 2 of this fabric and 2 of my lining fabric, so 4 pieces altogether. The next thing that we're going to show you how to do is how to transfer some of the other marks on your pattern to your cloth before you lift the pattern off and start sewing it together. What we're going to do is show you the pocket placement. So we've given you a guide as to where you could put them. We've actually angled the pockets slightly so it's easy to put your hands in like this. But we recommend later on in the pattern that you try it on and decide where you feel most comfortable and where's the right height for your hands as well to sit comfortably. But in order to make these marks, we're going to show you how to go through, and we use some basting thread, or you can use a contrast piece of cotton so that you can see it clearly on your fabric. This is proper basting thread, so it's got tiny little hairs on it which you can see when you look at it closely, and that means that it clings very nicely to the fibres in your cloth. And if you've got a project that you're putting down, picking up again, or that's going to sit in the cupboard for a while, then these stay in really, really well. It's also very easy to snap, so it will never damage the fabric that you're putting it into, and when you come out to pull out those threads at the end, it's really easy to remove it. So before we lift the paper pattern off our fabric, there are a few markings that I'm going to show you how to do, and they're marked on here by these tiny circles, and we're going to use the basting thread to be able to put these marks through both layers of the apron, and then they're easy to find when we're placing the pockets onto it and sew them in the right position. So what you want to do, where there's a circle here, is you have your double thread on your needle with no knot on the end, and you're going to go in through the paper and the fabric right to the back and back up onto the top like so, and you're going to pull through till there's about 1.5 inches of thread remaining, and snip like this. So that's one. We'll do the same process here. So I started out with quite a long piece of basting thread on my needle, so I don't have to rethread it between each marking. Like this. And then the third one is here. Don't use your big scissors, by the way, for the next step, because you're in danger of snipping into your cloth. If you do, you need some smaller blades. So you can then, I know that I've got all these markings and the notches on the front of my apron pattern, so I can now actually lift the paper pattern off. So I remove the pins, and because this thread that I've just made has gone right through the cloth to the back as well, when I lift the paper pattern off now, it won't pull them away. So you can just remove these like that and set that aside. If I now opened up the apron on the fold, these marks would only be on one side of the apron, and obviously the pockets are on both sides, so I need to transfer it across. And you do that by folding back the fabric, so here, so I've still got some thread on the top and there's some thread in the centre, and that's why you've got quite a long piece of thread when you start. So you've got enough room now to be able to just go in and snip about halfway across. That now leaves a tail attack on this side of the cloth and this side of the cloth symmetrical. You pull back again, the next notch I know is here. So now pull back to this position here. And then the final one is there. Sometimes you may pull too far and you might lose a little bit of thread, but these are generally, they're there as a useful pointer for the next step.